Good morning, welcome. If you're new here, I'm Melissa, and today's video is going to be my top 12 plants of 2023, but I'm gonna do it a little bit different. Instead of picking like my top 12 favorite plants, I'm going to dedicate each month to a particular plant. I'm really excited to share these plants with you and the lineup that's here, so I really hope you enjoy this video. We're going to get started with our first plant in the month of January. At the beginning of the year, I really wasn't buying too many plants. January is my birthday month, so I did treat myself for my birthday and got a couple plants. And at that time, at the beginning of the year, I was still focused on like growing my collection. I had a lot of tremendous growth from the previous year, 2022, when we moved here. So starting off in January, I was just so blown away by the growth on a lot of my plants, especially my alocasias. They were doing so well. And so I treated myself for one plant that I got in January because I was just looking forward to getting this plant and starting the year off with like, going into spring, I'm gonna have so much growth this year. A lot of things did set me back in the year 2023, and I'll get into those. But I wanna show one of those plants I got for my birthday because I'm excited for it for the coming year, especially because I did find a new substrate that I am loving, and I have transitioned or am going to transition all of my alocasias to it. So the first plant is this Alocasia Jacqueline. It looks a lot different than earlier this year in January when I got it. I got it from an Etsy shop with a Monstera dubia plant, and I was so excited to get a Jacqueline. I was looking or had like it was a wish list plant. I really wanted it, and I'm so happy with it currently. It did have a little bit of a setback with the majority of my other alocasias, but it has bounced back in the later part of the year, and I'm just super excited and looking forward to the growth for next year. And it currently has 3 leaves, and it's a beautiful alocasia. It has such a cool texture and shape to it. The plant leaves itself have like the fuzzy little hairs, so it's such a unique plant leaf because I don't think I have a plant leaf that has little hairs. It's so cool. I know some begonias have like little fuzzies, but not an alocasia. I don't have one that has this. So it's so unique. So I have 1 leaf, and then I have 2 leaf here, and then 3 leaf. You can kind of see it's getting ready to push a leaf right here. So I should have a 4th one soon. I dealt with a pretty like ugly fungal issue with a lot of my alocasias. And so after that point, I realized like I really wanted to try Pawn out. It's semi-hydro, and I never tried it before. I didn't try it until like mid-summer. So this is one that I ended up putting into Pawn after I tried it with a few other plants and got great results. And so it's put out some pretty big leaves in Pawn, this one and this one. I'm glad that it's working on a new leaf because I feel like it's been a while. I don't know if it's just been a little bit stagnant. I am gonna start fertilizing this soon because I use Lechuza brand Pawn, and it comes with 6 months of fertilizer, so I haven't had to use any extra. But I definitely feel like it's probably time to start fertilizing this plant. But I love Alocasia Jacqueline. It just set the tone for alocasias for me this year because I just love them. It's not my favorite genus, but it's one of my top favorites, and I just really love alocasia and I adore them, and so happy with how this plant is looking now. And I'm excited to see how much it's going to grow in the coming year. So definitely one of my favorites for 2023, and I just felt like I had to give this plant to January because yeah, it was one of my top wish lists at that time. And again, I treated myself for my birthday, and I just adore this plant. So super happy with it and can't wait for more growth. For the month of February, I'm gonna give it to Monstera Adinoni, and I adore this plant. It looks so much different now compared to February, and it's just crazy the progress this plant has made. I recently shared this plant as of this month in December, and so many people just thought that I was lying about this plant. It's not the same plant. It's completely different. And it's funny how social media is, because I know it's the same plant. I've filmed all of the chops I've done on this plant, and I don't know. It's just like, why would I fake or lie about my plant growth, you know? I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. But Monstera Adinoni was one of my first plants I ever did on a moss pole. I learned so much in that span of time. This was like going on about 2 years. I put this plant on a pole in early 2021, and I really didn't start diving more into moss poles until like summer of that year, 2021. I put like a few plants on poles, and then kind of going into 2022, like we knew we were moving soon, and I didn't want to start too many more plants on poles until after we moved here, and it kept getting delayed. So I had a ton of plants that I ended up starting on poles when I moved here last summer in 2022, and that's when majority of my moss pole collection started. And I had so much plant growth last year, and even like to this year, my plants on poles have just gotten huge, and this is one of them. I chopped this plant first in July or June of 2022 after we moved. And then this has now been chopped 2 more times since then. The second chop was in February, and that's why I wanted to give February to this plant, because I was just super excited to chop a plant for the second time. This was my very first moss pole chop that I did, and it was my very first second pole chop, and it shocked the first time, so I was super anxious, and it was climbing so well, and I was just so looking forward to what this plant was going to turn into. And then I chopped it for the third time in August of this year. And since the chop, I've gotten some pretty big leaves. These 2 top ones, this one is the newest one. It's about 17 inches in length. It's pretty crazy how big this plant is. It is a Monstera Adinoni. I know it does look like a different plant, but it's not. It's the very same plant, you know, that I started from such a tiny little thing, you know, and this is what it's matured into. I've gotten, I think, 4 or 5 leaves since August. It's pretty much given me a leaf a month, I would say, and it's probably going to push a new leaf here soon. I can tell it's going to work on it, but it's hard to really see like the full plant. So we have like the bottom growth down here when I chopped, and then this was at the top of the pole initially, and then it's continued to climb and climb and climb and climb, and now it's like maturing. Now I did recently switch to a liquid fertilizer. A few months ago, I would say at the end of September is when I purchased mine, so that's definitely helping. I feel like I really loved Osmocote, and I got so much great growth from Osmocote, but I feel like the liquid fertilizer and getting those nutrients instantly, in a sense, is definitely helping with growth size and everything. So I just love Monstera Adinoni. I just had to feature this plant because it's so special. It's hard to really like showcase her in full because of her size and everything. But yeah, this is like how big she's climbed. And yeah, she's one of my favorite moss pole plants because of that sentimental factor and the fact that she's climbing and doing so well. I'm super excited to see how she's gonna climb. She has a long way to go till she gets to the top of this, so I'm curious how like mature she's actually gonna get. And then I probably will add like a foot or so extension onto this before I go like chopping again, because these are some pretty big leaves. So I don't know how much bigger they're gonna get. Especially inside, you know, it's not like they're growing up on trees, even though this is kind of simulating that. So yeah, Monstera Adinoni, I love this plant. So we are moving in now to the month of March. Another thing that happened to me kind of later last year into the beginning of the year, I was dealing with flat mites with a lot of my Moranta and Calathea collection. I did make some videos on flat mites, and I discovered them when I noticed some weird markings on a couple plants and some like stunted growth, especially in my environment where they're getting you know, pretty good light and fertilizer. I'm like, something is wrong with this plant. I had to restart several Moranta plants because of that reason. And one of them was my Moranta silver band. And this is what she's looking like now. So the original plant I took cuttings from, and this is actually her cuttings. The original plant was pretty bare, and I felt like flat mites were still returning on it, and it just didn't do well. So unfortunately that original plant didn't make it, but I'm so glad that I took cuttings because the cuttings are just growing like crazy. This Moranta means so much to me, and I was so sad to discover that with my collection. But again, these cuttings are so happy. I don't see any evidence of any flat mites or anything. She's like growing a ton. I have this plant in a tiny 4-inch pot, and I really need to upsize this one, so I'm gonna do that soon. But she's giving me lots of new growth. I currently have a bloom on her right here. I love the silver band. I mean, I love all Morantas, but the silver band is definitely special. Such a beautiful Moranta. So I'm so happy to see that she's coming back. And I have several Morantas that have come back since having flat mites. Some are still like kind of iffy. Some plants completely went dormant and didn't do well at all and are still struggling, but this one is definitely one that has returned, and I'm so happy that I have my silver band growing again. I am going to take more cuttings probably when I go to repot her, because I don't want to not have this plant in my collection. So I'd rather have a backup of plants that are like my favorite, you know, just in case. And I can always add the cuttings in later if I want to, but I feel like having a second Moranta silver band would make me happy because I don't want that to ever happen again. But I do want to get in the habit, that's a goal for next year, is I want to really take time to clean my leaves and take that effort to do that, because I feel like I don't do that enough, especially plants that are more prone to pest like Moranta. I want to do like weekly or bi-weekly spray downs of Castile soap or some kind of pest prevention other than predatory mites, because I feel like that would really help. Just the effect of like showering plant leaves off will knock so many pests off. So I had to give this Moranta to March just because I was so devastated after finding flat mites and all of the setbacks I had with those plants. So I just wanted to like commemorate flat mites and the return of so many of my plants with this one. So yeah, I adore this plant so much. For the month of April, I'm going to give it to my Calathea micholitziana. My Calathea micholitziana is so sentimental to me, and she's beautiful. I grew her back from nothing, and ever since she came back, she's been growing and doing so well. And April, I kind of like, she started growing a little bit better. I did upsize her to an 8-inch in February of this year. And then yeah, ever since then, she just started taking off and growing so well. It's my favorite Calathea. She did have some spider mites earlier this year that I took care of, and I don't want those to come back or anything like that. So I definitely want to stay on top of that for next year, because if something happened to her, I would be so sad. She did bloom for me a lot earlier this year. Calatheas bloom, if you didn't know. She hasn't bloomed in a little while, so yeah, I'm not sure when she'll bloom again. It's probably just, I don't know, the off season. And you know, I started using the liquid fertilizer now too, so she's definitely growing in a ton since then. I have lots of new leaves coming in. She outgrew her space down here, so I just have her sitting on the floor. So she's not like directly under a grow light, but she kind of gets some ambient light now. This one never got affected by flat mites, and I was so like thankful and appreciative because she was touching and near plants that had flat mites, so they spared her, and I was so like happy about that. But I love this plant so much. Definitely just one of my top plants overall, and I adore her. I don't know. I don't have any words to describe how this plant makes me feel. I just would be so sad if she left my collection. I love looking at her, when I come into my plant room. I love seeing her down here. She's currently sitting beside my Moranta silver band, and these two plants together just make me so happy. And yeah, when she started growing, kind of like around April, it just was a sentimental month for her because I feel like, wow, this plant is doing so well. And to see her now at the end of the year looking like this is amazing. So I'm glad that she's happy and is just loving the environment and the care and everything. So I hope that I can continue to make her happy for next year. And there's no like setbacks or anything like that. So Calathea micholitziana. We are in the month of May now, and for May, I'm going to give it to Monstera Adinoni. This is my original Monstera Adinoni Constellation, and I love this plant. I love Monstera. It's my favorite genus. She just gave me this new leaf. I had to show you. Right here, look at that perfect leaf and that creamy variegation. I adore this plant so much. I grew this Monstera from a node, and believe it or not, and the reason that she's featured for the month of May is, so we had the whole flat mite issue, and then I kind of discovered some fungal issues, and then kind of around that same time is when I discovered root rot issues with some of my like most loved plants. They were in a substrate that I no longer use. Honestly, just the thought of this plant having root rot scared me because I dealt with rot on a Thai before and it didn't go well. This isn't my first Thai-con, and I was very sad about that. We battled root rot for like 6 months, and it eventually like rotted the node and just killed the plant. So I'm very like appreciative that I have this plant growing now, and she just like bounced back from root rot. I did upsize her a couple months ago, so she's now in a very, very aerated mix. Her root system is healthy, and yeah, like I said, she's pushing new growth. And this isn't my only Thai-con. I actually have another one here. This one here, I have a second one. This is a completely different plant, and I got this one earlier this year. Again, same thing happened. I battled root rot. This one is clearly overdue for a repot and a water, I think, probably here soon too. But they both like handled it like a champ. They did so well after root rot, which completely surprised me. I just adore these plants so much. I adore all my variegated Monsteras, and I was just so sad to discover that they all rotted. I'm going to show you some of my other ones a bit later for a different month, but Thai Constellation is definitely one of my favorites. I love just all the variegated Monsteras. It's really hard to choose like my top favorite, but I'm so happy that my Thais came back, and I just love and adore them so much. Dun 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 dun. You can't even see the leaves. Whoop, look at those. Look at how gorgeous. This is Filiadin Splendid, and I have to give Splendid to, what month are we on? We're in June, the month of June. I had just done like the second chop on this plant, and I was super impressed with how well this plant has grown. It had gone through like a previous chop, and just so excited for this one. It had been such an easy plant to climb and grow. And so I chopped it a third time since then, and this is what the plant is looking like. It was a pretty recent chop, and it's done only one new leaf here since the chop. This was the top growth. This one, like right before I chopped. And Filiadin Splendid is such a beautiful philodendron. In the backside, it's hard to really make out, but it's such a beautiful plant. And it's doing so well. It's climbing so well. Such an easygoing philo. I feel like I had to feature it for this month. You can kind of see like all the bottom growth. I did add the second vine on this one growing, so there's actually 2 in here now. It's just now starting to activate its axillary bud. And then the main vine that's climbing was the top growth, and this other vine was the bottom growth when I chopped it again. So yeah, first leaf, it's probably going to push its next leaf very soon. Once this plant gets climbing, it grows pretty quickly. It grew to the top of its pole, not even, I would say, within a year. It's crazy how quickly it climbed. Yeah, one of my top favorite philodendron for sure. just like overall plants. I love this philodendron. It's just, I feel like out of all the philodendrons, this one does not give me any trouble. It's such a great climber, a fast grower, and just such a beautiful plant. So I definitely recommend Philodendron Splendid. I have to have this plant in my collection because I just adore it so much. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see where it's gonna go. I'm probably gonna add like a foot extension or so on top. I don't plan on chopping this anytime soon because it climbs so fast, and I already did 2 chops on it this year, so I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm definitely gonna have to add a little bit of an extension. It's already probably 5 feet tall, and I don't have that much room. But yeah, I had to give the month of June to this plant, and yeah, I adore this one so much. We are now into July, and I'm gonna give July to my Philodendron Sword Roy. And I talked about this plant so much this year. I featured it in so many favorite videos, and it just goes to show you that it's definitely one of my top philodendron and top favorite plants. I just love the leaf and the pattern and the shape and the color. Such a beautiful philodendron. I have one of the original leaves kind of going here. It's crazy how quickly this one climbed. I got this at the end of 2022 and it did so well. I would say by summer, yeah, like July, this plant really started to grow and take off, and I was just blown away by how quickly it was climbing and how well it was doing. And it's still growing away even though we're into winter. It has a new leaf here that it's pushing out. And I'll eventually like get this extended again, but I love this plant. I love I feel like I love the internodal spacing is a little bit shorter too, because I love that about plants. And one of my not newer favorites, but one of my plants that kind of excelled towards the end of the year this year, I'm just gonna quickly show you my Majestic, because this plant is gorgeous. It's just like recently started growing and climbing really big. You can see the difference between the two. The Majestic here is a hybrid of Sword Roy and Varicosum, but you can see the Majestic is bigger. But I feel like I had to give it to the Sword Roy because it's the one that's been growing the longest and has sized up and done so well. And I feel like this one was only like the last couple months. So definitely giving it to this one for 2023, but they're both easygoing and both beautiful. You honestly can't go wrong with any of them. I'm looking forward to these plants for next year for sure, and to see how much they can climb, because they're just going to be such beautiful poles and I adore them both. So definitely I highly recommend if you don't have one. We are now moving into the month of July, and I'm giving July to none other than Miss Marble Queen. I adore her so much. She's definitely in one of my top 5 favorite plants overall. But this year she's had such tremendous growth, and she recently got chopped in that time frame area. She had climbed to the top after her initial chop, and her leaves got huge. So big and massive, and I wished I let her climb a little bit more before I chopped her, but her bottom half was still plastic and I really wanted to get rid of that base for more support. So I chopped her, and she's taken a little bit of a setback. It's taken a while for her leaves to kind of grow and get bigger again. So they're just now starting to finally size up again, and I'm gonna extend this pole another 2 feet at least before I even think about chopping her, because I want her to get those huge, beautiful leaves. If I can get an Epipremnum aureum to fenestrate, that would be amazing inside. And I saw a golden climbing and in real life on a tree, and it was gorgeous. And so I recently started a golden a few months ago as well. So I'm excited for that one for the coming year. But I'm going to show you her in her spot because, again, she's a big pole and she's hard to move, and I don't want to knock my poles over by going over to her. By trying to bring her down. So yeah, I'll let you have a good look at her and her gorgeous variegation. And she does have another vine finally activating growth. It's very small right now, but it'll eventually size up. That was her bottom half, just like what I did with my Splendid. I added it in, And it took a bit of a hit, it shocked, but it finally stabilized, and again, she's doing and climbing so well. So yeah, Miss Marble Queen, I look forward to this pole for next year. I'm excited to see what she's gonna look like. I just adore this plant so much. She was one of my first poles I started before I did move, and yeah, I had no idea what I was doing at that time, but I knew I wanted pothos to climb, and I loved Marble Queen for the beautiful variegation that you got for an inexpensive plant. So yeah, I love her so much, and definitely like my top plant. I had to feature her. Now for the month of September, I'm going to feature 3 plants because they're all kind of grouped into like variegated monsteras. I probably should have grouped this in with my Monstera ties, but I feel like my ties at that point were the first to kind of bounce back from root rot, and my Monstera Ara specifically, I was the most upset about because I had grown it from a cutting, and same with my elbow, and it was just, I don't know, it was just so special, and to have to like chop away the root system and chop this plant up because of rot just devastated me, and I just felt like defeated. I don't know. I was just so sad about that, and it hurt to do that to this plant. And I rooted her top cut in water. She had a massive root system. It was insane. And I potted her up, and this is what she's looking like now. And she's finally given me a new leaf after the repot, you can see. The variegation is going to be gorgeous. It takes a few weeks for the variegation to harden with an Aria, but I love her. She's doing so well since her repot into here, and I'm really, really excited to see this plant growing again. You have no idea. I mean, I was upset to the point that I was like in tears and crying. I was just so devastated. So Monstera Ara is just so sentimental. I love this plant. I love this Monstera, and I can't wait for it to grow and just start climbing and doing well and getting huge again. I had a couple other variegated Monstera plants that I ended up propagating and taking back, but here's just an example of one that I recently potted up into pon. I have a couple cuttings in here, so I'm excited to see how this is going to do because I don't have a Monstera in pon. And I'm also going to go ahead and show you my mint for this month as well, because I wanted to group this one in here because I got it for my anniversary in August, and it was like a tiny tissue culture, and it's starting to climb and get bigger. That's a new leaf there. That's what the mint is looking like. I just upsized it too recently, so it's got a little bit more room to climb. And this is one that I'm most excited for next year because I love the minty color and mint leaves, and to get a Monstera mint is a complete wish list for me. I'm so excited for all these and how they're going to do for next year. Again, I just adore them. I love them, and yeah, I feel like if I just had my variegated Monsteras and a few other plants, I would be happy and I wouldn't need anything else. It's hard to pick favorites sometimes, but these are definitely at like the top of my list. For the month of October, we are going to feature none other than Aloca micholitziana. And interesting enough, I recently learned that the green velvet version is not called Friedeck, or that's not the correct name, which I didn't know. I always thought the Friedeck was just like a name for it, and apparently the Friedeck is the name for the variegated version. So Aloca micholitziana is the correct name, or it's also known as green velvet or Max Kowalski, if I'm saying that right. So yeah, that's the actual name for it. But I'm going to feature them both for the month of October because I adore them both so much. Many of you know the long history with my Aloca Friedeck this year. It underwent complete abortion of all of its leaves. I had it in soil and the max amount of leaves it had was 12. It was doing so well, and then it started yellowing and aborting them all, and I attribute that to like a fungal issue that I had with a lot of my alocasia collection and some other plants. It had a huge setback. It completely was a stub. This was back in June. It was down to nothing. I ended up propagating it in half, and I have both of those halves in pon, and that's when I first discovered pon and started using pon. And then just like 2 months later, the alocasias had grown in so much. I was so blown away with pon at that point. I honestly just think it's magic, and alocasias are thriving in it. To have my alocasia be a complete stump in June and 6 months later for it to be the plant that it is now, I think it's working on its 9 leaf, which is crazy. The variegated version I love as well. It's just such a beautiful plant, and I adore these plants. And I recently took my variegated one out of the cabinet, so they're in a new spot now. So I'm hoping it does okay out of the cabinet. I'm kind of just like seeing how they do in this new spot. I have them like in the corner beside my window, like in front of me. And so far they seem to be doing well. The variegated one did drop a couple leaves, I think, from the shock of being from like 1,000-foot candles in my cabinet to a little bit lower. So I think it was a little bit of adjustment. I probably should have shined more light on it initially, but I think it's stabilized. So far so good. I definitely want to add a little bit more light to that area because it doesn't get a ton, and it's definitely some low light in that little corner. So I'm thinking about getting a lamp and shining it on my alocasias. So I might do that for next year. I just feel so like thankful that they grew back and are doing so well, and I love them. That could be my only alocasia and I would be happy. I just love them that much. I think I have like 15 or 16 varieties of alocasia now. It's up there. Probably actually closer to 17. I recently got 2 that I acquired in the month of December, so they're just like little babies right now. But yeah, I love alocasia and they make me so happy. So definitely some of my favorite plants. For the month of November, I'm actually going to give November to some tiny little baby plants. Bigger does not always mean better. I know I showed some pretty big, impressive plants, and they've come a long way. But I want to give some love to my little babies because they're sentimental, because I crossed my anthurium. I actually crossed 2 and I have little babies from each. So this is my Crystal Meg hybrid that self-pollinated, and these are some babies that are growing in. So cute. I have this baby, and this baby. So these are the 3 that I'm keeping for me. And I had like 361 seeds, and it was such a special moment because it was my first cross that I was successful with and was able to like harvest the berries and grow the seeds out. So to have a little plant that I grew from a seed that I crossed is so special. And then I also did it with my Clarinervium and Pedato radiatum. So I have like little babies of these too, as you can see. So cool. So I'm definitely excited for these. And I also got a little bit more into tissue culture this year, and I love tissue cultures. I think for 2024, I'm definitely going to get more tissue cultures to grow into big plants. And I'm going to show you one of the tissue cultures. This is a Monstera Burl Marks Flame. Now I know it's very tiny right now, but this is one that I'm definitely looking forward to for 2024. And it's so tiny right now, you guys. It's such a baby. I had a leaf like yellow off, but I heard Monstera Burl Marks Flame does grow a bit slow. So I think it's gonna take a while for this plant to actually like start growing and getting bigger. And I do have some roots here. It's planted right now into a mix of mostly coco coir and perlite. I did recently upsize these with a few other tissue cultures, but I'm thinking I might switch this to pon once it grows more, but I'm not sure. If it does well in my aeroid mix, I'll keep it in here, but I can't wait until this gets bigger. Ugh. I see these like on Instagram and they're so beautiful because I love Monstera and the leaf is just chef's kiss. I love it so much. So I just wanted to give some love to some little baby plants because I had some successful anthurium pollination and tissue culture this year, like that experience, and it wouldn't be 2023 without that experience, you know? So this is Miss December, none other than Philodendron Aloca Red. And I feel like it's the perfect plant for Christmas, December, because of the red back, the red and green. Such a beautiful plant. Look at that. So I have my Aloca in pon right now, and it currently has 5 leaves. It's hard to see them all. I did switch it to pon a few months ago. That was the first leaf in pon that jumped up, and then this is the newest leaf here, which is definitely a bit bigger. It's so beautiful. I feel like this plant is going to just be one of my top plants for next year if it continues to grow and do well in pon. I do need to upsize this one like soon because I'm getting a lot of roots down into the chamber here, the reservoir, and I feel like it's time to upsize this one. The Philodendron Aloca Red, I tried growing in soil a couple of times and it got root rot and it just stressed and didn't want to grow, and then I decided to make the transition to pon. I had it like rerooting back in sphagnum moss, and then I switched it to pon for moss, and not even like a few weeks later it gave me this first leaf. Compared to like some of the smaller leaves here, like this first leaf was a huge jump. Like it was crazy. I wasn't sure what my Aloca was gonna do, but it looks like it's now like climbing up. So I'll definitely have to give it some support here, but I'm excited for it. It's such a beautiful plant. And I love the backside especially. So yeah, I feel like this was the perfect plant to feature for December because of the growth I've gotten again with pon, with my allocation, everything. I'm just so excited for some of these plants next year to really grow back, like my alocasia collection and everything else that I have in pon. I'm just so excited for them. So yeah, I had to feature this one because it's a gorgeous plant, and again, one of my favorites this year, and one that I think I'm really going to love for next year. Thank you so much for watching my planty favorites for 2023. It was really fun to go through each month and pick a plant for the month that kind of stood out to me, or like something happened that made it grow better and do better. And I'm really just in love with these plants. I have so many more that I wanted to feature, but I had to give it to these ones for this year, and I adore them and I love them all so much. I'm looking forward to next year and my plant growth. I really just feel so appreciative and grateful to be here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching and supporting. I really hope that you go into 2024 with you being happy with your collection, and any issues that you're experiencing, I hope it gets better for you. And yeah, I'm just so excited to be here and just so thankful for you. So again, just thank you so much for being here. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again very soon in the next year.